overcoming adversity, doing it at all costs, making wins at all loss. Yeah, the world is all lost, yeah. Ain't no turning back, we headed straight for the stars, yeah. Oh yeah, we overcoming adversity, doing it at all costs, making wins at all loss. Yeah, the world is all lost, yeah. Ain't no turning back, we headed straight for the stars, yeah. Oh yeah.
Welcome to the Overcoming Adversity podcast, where it's all about a transformational growth and having a resilient mindset. Before we get started to the show, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. I'm your host, Michael Allison, and today we have on the show a very unique man. He's had the opportunity to work in the financial industry for over 15 years. That includes working on Wall Street trading, insurance sales, and retirement planning. He has faced his own fair share of adversity in his life. Let's welcome to the show my good friend, Mr. Femi Adenuse.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, my brother, thank you for being here on the show with me, man. I appreciate it, bro.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Man, so like I was telling you, man, before I want to jump into this, I said, man, I've admired your knowledge, your wisdom that you've shared with me ever since we met back in Texas, man, and your knowledge around the financial space, the insurance space, the pharmaceutical space. I felt that it was important to have you on this platform where you could share that knowledge to the masses and things like that, because I think there's so much information that a lot of people are missing out. I would say more so in particular, like people of color are missing out. And I think it would be a good opportunity to have you on this stage here. We could share some of that information, man. So thank you for being here, bro.
Man, I just want to really thank you for the opportunity, to be honest with you. Obviously, when we met out in Texas a couple of years ago, we gelled, hit it off right away. I feed a lot off energy, and I felt a good vibe from you. Obviously, we've kept in touch since that time, and you've gone to do big things. Obviously, this podcast is helping a lot of people, and I appreciate you even reaching out to me to share a couple of nuggets that I've learned over these ups and downs that we call life.
Absolutely, man. This thing, life, bro. You know, I we spoke about it comes with a lot of adversity, man. I just want to talk about though as we get into it. Obviously, you've accumulated so much success in your life, man. But I do know your journey started somewhere, man. So if you can tell us, like, how did you get on this path, and what was it like for you coming up, bro?
I appreciate that. Basically, I grew up in Harlem. My background is I have a Nigerian father and a West Indian mother. So you know I got the best beatings man can get.
We're gonna start off with the jokes. All right, let's go.
There's no question. So you have a Nigerian father who came here to the States. He actually settled in New York and finished up his PhD. So my father was basically a biology professor.
Mhm.
My mother was a medical assistant in Harlem Hospital. If you know anything about New York, Columbia, where he finished up his PhD, is very close to Harlem Hospital. So they basically met, fell in love, got married, and then they made me. So my roots are from Harlem, but I've lived various places. So I went to school in Stony Brook, out in Long Island, and I took up economics. So I grew up in, 80s, 90s. Harlem was nothing to play with. A very dangerous area. If you know about, the drug element, Alpo, these are Fat Cat and all these type of guys like that. These are famous drug dealers here in the New York area that basically had New York under siege, because back then there was more criminals really than police force. So basically, to keep me very safe and things of that nature, my mom used to send me away to summer camp, things of that nature, get me out of trouble, keep me out of trouble for the most part. And thank goodness everything turned out well as could be, because not to say that I went through unscathed. So
Mhm.
I have a few friends that have committed suicide. I had from friends that are never coming home from jail. And I had a few friends that were obviously a victim of the drug game and the elements that that brings. So, long story short, one of the things that really saved me, to be honest with you, is me going away to college,
Mhm.
because environment is huge. So now when if you're in a drug infested criminal type of aspect where everyone's doing the same thing, you have to do something different. So the biggest thing for me is most of my friends who stayed at community college here in New York, they either got an associate's or never graduated because the
Mm-hmm.
distraction and the environment was too much to overcome. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
Makes sense, bro.
So I was lucky enough. One thing about me is because of that background, Nigerian father, West Indian mother, where the father come home. Oh, you want to act up at school? You want to act up? Oh, it's too easy for you, huh? So I'll give you something hard. Take these lickings. So that between that and my mom, even though my mom and father parted ways when I was in high school, he went back to Nigeria and she stayed here, obviously in New York with me. Um, that structured background and me not wanting to disappoint my mom. She was
Mhm.
working two jobs. Heck, I was even working two jobs to help her out. So I went out right away at 13, got my working papers, and started actually being the man of the house.
Mhm.
Since that time, both my parents are deceased, but they live within me because of all the lessons that they instilled, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So me not wanting to disappoint her, she was like, "You're going to go to college no matter what." So I actually did, and I love the thing. So the thing that really saved me, to be honest with you, and a lot of people don't talk about this, but some people may be too young or whatever. But what really made me want to go to college was A Different World, which was the spinoff from the Cosby Show. So the
Mm.
different world made me like, oh man, girls, fly girls, and all this, and no parents around. I mean, what's not to love? I'm with all of this. This is even better than hanging out with the local drug dealers. I mean, this is different. Once I saw Whitney, I was like, oh, it's a wrap. I know if Dwayne Wayne could get that, I know I could get something better. So at the end of the day, that's what made me really get up and want to, because I had a choice. I could have stayed at a local community college and been under the influence, hanging out in the lunchroom, doing all that. But watching that show, to be honest with you, made me want to go away from to college because it looked fun. It
Mhm.
looked different.
Mhm.
So a lot of times, people say, "Oh, don't watch TV," but there's certain shows that come on that can influence a whole generation. Because I know I'm
True.
not the only one. I've asked my friends, and they were like, "Yeah, seeing different world and the kind of fun that they were having, it was a different environment than what we were used to. There was not as much danger. There wasn't all this street knowledge that you have to have. Keep your head on a swivel." And that was something different to me. I chased it, and obviously it worked out.
Man, thank you for sharing that, bro. You're not the first person I've heard said different world changed their lives, man, as they identified with characters in there and what was taking place, and like they did talk about like real life things that was going on that people could identify with, and they felt genuine and authentic about it. It wasn't anything like fairy tale or made up. You know what I mean? I um I want to unpack a couple things, bro. You said a couple important points that I wanted to maybe pull some stuff out of the stories that you mentioned. So growing up in that environment, I know that you had to like navigate your way through that, which you did, and your parents, I would say, seen it and said they don't want their son to be a part of that. So what is it that you would say that you would draw from within you that you could say has that background has impacted your life now today based off how you grew up and just like missing all those things or not being in that environment where you know what it could have been if you had stayed.
Well, I think one of the big things was is that, and I'll just keep it real. I was friends with everyone, so I was the type of dude that had the drug dealer friends and things of this nature, and I was around in that mix.
Hmm.
But one of the biggest things that really kind of influenced my life is that I had a good friend. So my mom basically was from a small country called Montserrat, and she had a friend that came over because back then you would get a visa from England and then come to New York or some other state. So that was kind of like the little portal of how you got out of the West Indies to
That's
get
what
up.
my parents did too, man.
Exactly. So, Montserrat is basically was under British law. So they allowed you to get a visa because it was colonized by the British.
Right.
So she went, and that's how she got to New York.
Hmm.
So long story short, she had a friend from Montserrat, one of her friends that she grew up with, like her little sister girlfriend type of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
He had a son around the same age. But what happened is that when they came here, there was more of them. That he had about the one that was my age at the time was about 17. He had two older brothers. One was strung out on drugs, and the other one was one of the biggest drug dealers on the block in the
Oh,
Bronx.
Jesus.
So I grew up around that whole situation. So when she would send me up there on in the summer, she thought she was sending me to a safe place. Little did she know, she was sending me from the kettle straight into the frying pan. But I never said nothing because obviously I had a lot of fun up there.
Mm.
When you're friends to the brother of the biggest drug deal on the block, trust me, no one is looking at you. It's almost like you have that kind of influence. So
Hmm.
no one looked at us, no one messed with us. We would go to the court. Yo, we got next. All right. Yeah, yeah, we got next. Exactly. So that's one aspect of it, right? And hindsight is 2020. Obviously, that kind of influence is not what you want in your life.
Right.
But what do I know at the time? I'm 17 years old, things of this nature. But obviously, the story didn't end well when obviously drugs are involved. So he eventually, because you get too big, right? You get too big, you become too big of a drug star, as they used to say back then. He went to jail, got a long sentence. That's when they were giving out those football numbers. You're talking about, Bush and the Reagan administration. They were trying to clean up the streets, things of this nature. And my friend, who I knew at the time, he was devastated because he was very close to his older brother.
Hmm.
He knew he wasn't going to come home for at least 20 years minimum. So, I still kept coming up there and hanging out and things of this nature. But long story short, he eventually started selling drugs, and I was kind of around that and things of that nature. But he didn't really want to. He just kind of like just took it up as kind of like a coping mechanism.
Right.
Okay. And I was just around at the time. So long story short, eventually it got too much from him. He wasn't as good as his brother, obviously. And too much beef started happening and things of this nature. And it got in his head, and long story short, he committed suicide.
Mm.
So he committed suicide one day. I wasn't around, obviously. I got the phone call, and that kind of flatlined me because at 17, I've never lost anyone that close to me. This guy was like my brother. We hung out every summer. I'm talking about from the time school got out straight to when school left. Because, like I said, my mom thought she was sending me to a safe environment away from Harlem. Meanwhile, South Bronx was hotter than fish grease. This is the time I'm talking about Fat Joe and all that stuff like that. So when people talk about Fat Joe and these rappers like that, these guys really did it because I was around and saw that.
Hmm.
So long story short, that changed something different in me, and that was also around the time where I was going to go to Stony Brook, and that made it a profound decision that I definitely got to get away. This one was a little too tough for me because I never lost anyone that close. I never really seen a lot of death situations at that time and suicide at that. So obviously it was very devastating. Went to the funeral, things of that nature, but I made a decision right then and there. This environment, I got to somehow separate myself from this because eventually it'll pull me in as well.
Wow, I got you, man. So I was thinking about what you said. So my mom and dad did the same thing when they left Jamaica. They went to New York before they came to Miami to link up with me and my siblings. So it's funny how those were the means people had to go through, like back in the 70s and 80s and stuff like that. Probably some of the 90s too. I know that they did that in the 80s for us.
Sure.
Bro, so speaking of like losses and seeing your friend pass away and that kind of flatlined you, I wanted to kind of bring it back to your mom and dad. So mom and dad divorced, you said around high school, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
And then that must have had an impact on you when they went their separate ways. How did that affect you while you was growing up?
Um, to be honest with you, my father worked a lot, but the real catalyst, even though I don't believe it's an excuse, but I do understand it. So what happens is that he came here. Now, if you know anything about Nigerian education, it's top of the line.
Hmm.
Okay. So he came here and was swimming through these PhD classes. Okay.
All right.
Graduated with honors at Columbia, which was a big deal. Not a lot of people of our color graduating with PhDs at that time. Remember,
Hmm.
it's mid to early 80s.
Hmm.
Okay. So
Hmm.
now he's trying to get a job and they're playing the race card.
I see.
And him saying to himself, wait a minute. I've passed all your courses with flying colors, and you still won't give me a
Mm,
chance to be a biology professor, and I've done your curriculum.
wow.
So that was also my first bud or sip of racism,
Hmm.
very close to home, things of this nature. So, just being frustrated, them not giving him a chance to be a professor. Now he had all the credentials, all the bells and whistles, and still playing that card at that time. So he was like, why should I do this? I can go back to Nigeria and get hired right away.
Right.
And eventually he would do a summer, come back until eventually he didn't come back.
Mm,
So he got the position that he wanted at the University of Nigeria, which is what they call Unilag for short.
mhm.
So shout out to Niger because I know that's what y'all call it. Um, so he got that position, became very successful, and then eventually became the dean of biology and
Okay.
went on to have a 20-year career in the University of Nigeria. And very respected because obviously becoming the dean of a top university of Nigeria is a big deal. So, you know, we basically kept in touch, and I would go basically over there now for summers in college, and basically kept the relationship up. But after I graduated from college, it was time to be the man of the house, and you know, now it was trying to basically go out into the work field, and those summer little vacations had to cut out, and we basically would talk on the phone and things of that nature, and he would ask me how I was doing. He was proud of me, obviously, that I actually graduated from Stony Brook with an economics degree and things like that. And like a Nigerian father, go for your masters now, go for your listen.
So being labeled as the man of the house and now like putting that into action and like you're really like hustling, bustling, working, grinding, doing your thing. Did that come with any additional stress on you as you were going through it, or you just was going through it, or like you felt like I gotta make something happen, I gotta do this, or I gotta like live up to like expectations of like my mom and my dad based off like what they've instilled in you?
Yeah, it's that's a good question. It actually switched. So what happened is that at first it was both of them, but then I something switched off when I graduated from Stony Brook, where it's just like it's all about mom. I'm seeing her do work two, sometimes even three jobs, and I was working two jobs myself.
Mm-hmm.
I was on Stony Brook doing nighttime security at the time and working in the bursar's office. So I just, my whole mindset at that time was don't put any more stress on her and contribute to the household. So that was my biggest thing. So to be honest with you, to answer your question, I never even thought of the stress on me. My whole thing was make sure mom is good because she's
Mhm.
doing all this for me. So
Mhm.
I have to do my part and more. So
Mhm.
you know how they say for your loved ones, things of this nature, you'll run through a wall. You won't even worry if it breaks your hand or whatever happens to you. You're just too busy focused on making sure that they're good. So whatever stress that came at the time, I literally just brushed it off to make sure that she was well.
Got you.
Hmm.
So as we get ready to transition here into your business and the career that you're in, I have this one last question actually about your family and stuff. You had mentioned that they did both pass away.
Hmm.
So I wanted to just see if you wanted to elaborate on that and just speak about like that and then maybe the impact it had on you in regards to your life now.
Okay. So basically, after college, things of that nature, I was because the whole concept of him not getting a job in the early 80s and things of that nature, and I told you I got my first taste of racism, and obviously last time I checked, racism is not gone.
Right.
So now you had me facing the same thing. I graduated from Stony Brook. I have to now get out into the workforce, but obviously was better from the 80s. Now we're talking now the 90s, and I'm trying to do the same thing, but it hasn't gone away. It just gave me such a burning desire to actually go ahead and, you know, no matter if they play the race card, I'm going to play the hand that was dealt.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually wound up working on Wall Street um, by doing more than was expected. So
Mm-hmm.
what I mean by that is that I got my break as kind of like an intern on a Wall Street firm. Um, and basically, I would stay long hours, things of this nature, pick up on extra things like that. And at the end, so that's how you used to get into Wall Street at the time. You would do temp to perm type of hiring
I see.
situation. So they hired me on permanent, and I just took advantage and learned everything that I could on the trading desk
Mm-hmm.
about stocks, bonds, how to trade them, how to trade a trader's blotter, which is basically looking at the P&L the night before and seeing what the trader was going to trade in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So I just learned every aspect of that and was hoping at the time that, I would be based off my work ethic and my merit and knowledge and not my skin color. And what do you know? It worked out. So from there, they hired me permanently. I stayed with that firm for about 2 or 3 years. And then from that opportunity, I learned derivatives. And if you know anything about '08 and everything like that, knowing derivatives was huge.
Mm-hmm.
So now I became in very high demand. And then that's when my career basically took off. So as far as the passing of my father, at the time we weren't super close, but he kind of did let me know that he had cancer, colon cancer. He was trying to, get some treatment at the time, but he spoke on it too late.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he had already, went to the doctor and it was at stage 3. Maybe one of the reasons why I'm so into health now, especially men of color,
Mm-hmm.
being into their health a little bit more, because it was something I think could have been prevented if he had spoke up because there were symptoms there. He had blood in his stool. He was not feeling well. He was not teaching as many classes, but he ignored it like
Mm-hmm.
most men do. I'm tough. I'm strong. That type of situation.
Right.
So, his passing was hard on me, but not as hard because I was more close to my mom at that time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then shortly after that, after about, because he died in '06, my mom's didn't start to feel well. She was close to retirement in '09, and I took care of her from '09 to 2011. So her passing was obviously a lot more dramatic for me, but it was one of those things where I didn't have any ill will against it. Obviously, I didn't want her to pass, but the fact that from '08 to 2011, we spent the most closest years of our lives together because obviously I moved out of my house once I left Stony Brook. So I would just come on weekends. But then I transitioned to move back to Harlem and actually take care of her full time. So we got to spend quality time together before she transitioned, and that's something that I always warn any person to think that time is valuable and tomorrow is not promised. So when you have sick parents, things of this nature, spend the time because you just never know when that time is. So that's why her passing was difficult, but not as difficult because I was around her 24/7 during the last years.
Wow. Well, man, I, my condolences, and also, bro, I love the fact that throughout all this transition, man, like you had like so gracefulness about it. You know what I mean? Like you're appreciating like what's taking place and what's going on, and like you have the realization that this is someone that took care of me growing up, and now that I'm in this position to like give it back. You know what I mean? And take care of them during their transition, man. So I think that's kind of cool, man.
For sure.
A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't get that. You know, a lot of people just get the phone call. A lot of people get the text messages or something like that. But for you to actually embrace the person that brought you up, man, I think it's a different type of experience. You know what I'm saying? Based off how you kind of like shared it. So
That's why the Bible says, twice a child, once a man. A lot
true,
of people don't understand that phrase. What they mean is that you obviously are birthed from your parents, you're a child. You become a man one time. But
right,
then now once they become sick, you switch roles and you actually become the caregiver to them.
right,
So now where it was switched before, now you're almost like the parent because I took care of everything, paid her rent, even got her a separate holistic doctor
hmm,
because they had written her off when she had gotten sick
hmm,
because she had a lung issue, super healthy, but it was just like a rare lung disease and it wasn't cancer, so they ruled all these things out. But long story short, that's when I really got into holistic medicine, which is why I'm super into health right now, because she started me on that journey trying to save her and extend her life, which I wind up doing for another 3 years.
hmm,
And I appreciate her for that as well. So there's a lot of nuggets that were taught along the way. My father tasting racism made me that much more aggressive to say that I'm not going to allow that. I'm not going to run from it. I'm actually going to hit it head on. And
hmm,
then now my mom taking sick allowed me to find out that there's a lot of alternative medicines out there. When the doctor says no, there's a way and there's someone that can say yes. So these things I will never take for granted, dealing with those situations. That's why adversity does have a lesson if you're willing to look for it. Most people are looking at the adversity and they're just saying, "Woe is me. Why is this happening to me? I didn't do anything to anyone. I don't bother anyone." But the adversity is there for God to teach you something. So you have to learn through the lesson. Because if we came down here on earth and everything was just up, up, up and away, Superman, then why are we down here if we're not here to learn lessons? So,
right,
like my pastor says, we live life on levels and then arrive on stages.
right. You know, as you said that, man, it's something that I been saying a good bit when I speak to people. Whenever adversity hits, if we could shift our mindset from using the question why this, why that, and just start substituting the word what, you see that your mind goes into action thinking. If you start using questions around what should you do, what should be next, what is the next steps, those types of things, you see that your mind shift and just open up your mind to like start thinking of other possibilities and other things to do as you just continue to take action and move forward. Man, let's hop into this journey of yours, bro. So Wall Street, insurance, retirement, pharmaceuticals. Take me through your. Plus, you said you started working at 13, so take me through your career, man. Your entrepreneurship journey, your business journey, all of these ventures that you've been in, man. Because that's what I was telling you when we first started this podcast. You've had so much business experience, entrepreneur experience, and real life experience that you probably only shared maybe like 25% of that with me. But if you can, man. But if you can, bro, let's talk about that, man. Because I want to unpack quite a few questions from all of that, all of your business journeys and all the things that you've done, man. So can you take us through that journey of what you've done, man?
Absolutely. So, you know, half West Indian, half Nigerian. I had 22 jobs. Come on, you know that already.
Never
So,
mind, man, never mind. We have enough jobs.
enough. So, the whole concept, and I had the best of both worlds. So, you could forget about that. So, long story short, obviously back then you used to, have to get working papers to work.
Mhm,
You had to go through this whole little certification, get this paper to say that you're of age and your parents signed off on it and all this other stuff. So I ran out and got it. So even in junior high, I actually used to work bagging groceries at the supermarket, and then I also had a little library job as well, just
mhm,
putting the books away. So obviously, what I did is the supermarket near me, that's off the books. You just get whatever tip money for packing groceries. And I learned how to pack quickly, put the heavy stuff in first and all that stuff.
mhm.
But then I said, you know what? Me being the Nigerian, like, wait a minute, this is not enough money. So I went and took the working papers and went down to the city where they had the Ritzy supermarket. So you literally had, like, the more high-end supermarket. I'm not going to call the name and give them a free promo, but in here in New York City, there's more gourmet supermarkets where cheese is like $10.15, and it comes from Europe and all this other stuff. They got imported cheeses, imported wine. So I started working at that grocery store, and instead of in the hood, and the tips got much better.
Mhm.
I mean, like, this supermarket
Location.
This supermarket was so high class, they had people coming on there from soap operas. Okay. So
Okay.
you pack their grocery, they were giving you $10. That was a big deal back then. $10 tip, $5 tip. So I was making more money doing that. And then I did the little weekend library job and things of that nature. So that basically started off my entrepreneurship. I kept two jobs basically from that time all the way through college. Even in
Mhm,
college, like I said, I worked at the bursar's office where people would hope to get that little refund back from, overpaying for financial aid. And they're like, Femi, when is my check coming? Look my name up, Duncan, and all this other type of stuff. And I did a little bit of nighttime security at little college parties and things of that nature. So
mhm,
long story short, I kept two jobs throughout my career, graduated from Stony Brook, got the Wall Street opportunity, made the best of that. And then shortly after that, I actually got licensed in life and health.
mhm,
And then from learning from life and health, I just learned that, that insurance wasn't exactly death insurance as most people talked about. That mostly, yes, when someone passes, they should have life insurance, especially people of our color, and which is another issue and a whole nother separate podcast on why they don't have it and why it actually passes down financial disruption as far as legacy is concerned. Because when Nana dies and there's no insurance and no one knows how to pay the mortgage and everybody was just living in the brownstone and no one knows where her papers are, that can cause financial chaos.
right.
So long story short, I just really got into it because I love the fact that I can help people prepare them financially, even though people don't want to talk about death. It's going to happen. Newsflash, it's going to happen. So I just love the fact that of helping people because I've always been a person that loves to help people. Most people call it the helper's high,
Mhm,
where you just feel good helping people with the knowledge that like, oh, I didn't know about that. I'm like, yeah, you could do this, this, and this, and the will, you can get it for under $20, and you put it in a safety deposit box, and you tell all your children. So, God forbid if you pass, this is your game plan.
mhm.
So you want to make sure that your grandchildren and things of that nature. So I started doing a lot of insurance for older people, senior citizens, things of that nature, who didn't want to talk about death, but they knew that this was an unavoidable event and they wanted to talk to someone that had knowledge about it. So that's how I got into the life insurance world. And then when we met back in in Texas, I took it to another level and found out that the rich don't buy life insurance. They label it life insurance, but the higher level, the upper echelon of insurance is actually using insurance as a tax haven, and you can also use it to build wealth tax
Right.
free when you're time to retire, which is called an infinite policy plan.
Mhm.
So that's where I'm at right now, taking that knowledge that I've gained over the last couple of years and looking at the type of insurance policies that the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds have used to actually stay on top with their whole lineage, staying on top by literally passing on wealth through the concept of life insurance. But it's not like they really needed money to bury themselves. They were already rich,
Right.
but they used that concept to pass on the legacy. So as the grandchildren grow up, they're already set. And then now they leave them with certain rules and guidelines to continue the legacy.
So I'm gonna tap into the insurance thing a little bit, the will thing, and your last will and testament, if you
Mhm.
can. So when people actually, let me go back. You said this, and let's address it real fast. What are some of the misconceptions out there around life insurance? Why are so many people scared of attaining it, buying it, and using it?
That's a great question. To be honest with you, a lot of time is the way that it is presented, right?
Hmm.
So if you present something and it looks like it's going to be a negative aspect. So most people think of life insurance as, okay, I'm going to die, because that's all they think of because of just what it is.
Hmm.
Just like if you go to a used car sales lot, not every car salesman is sleazy, but basically used car salespeople, and I know a few, they all get that stigma because that's already out there. Oh, be careful, they're gonna try to take you. You see, so sometimes you have to uneducate and then re-educate.
Hmm.
So anytime I'm sitting down with a client to answer your question, first thing I start off with is education. I could care less about the sale. You can buy it from me, buy it from someone else, but let me educate you on what life insurance is for. So, life insurance is for A, to make sure that your funeral costs are covered. B is to make sure that you have enough expenses to cover whatever you were contributing. So if you're a husband, if you're a single person, whatever it is the concept. If my bills, for example, if I have a family of four, three kids and a wife or what have you, and the household expenses per month were $5,000. If I drop dead suddenly, not through a sickness, suddenly, car accident, shot, whatever the issue is, car, plane, train, automobile accident. How many months could my family, if I was paying most of the bills, survive if my income was not here?
Right.
No one thinks about that on a daily basis.
Hmm.
But it's my job as the advisor to say, hey, John, have you thought about that? If you passed away tomorrow, how would Jan cover this $5,000, including the mortgage, the kids' tuition, or how would they happen? And the answer is always, I don't know. Exactly. Exactly. You don't know.
Right.
Now you start to shift that mindset from insurance into protection.
Mm.
So this is the key. Protection against who? Against protecting my family from financial burden.
Right.
Now it's a different spend. I'm not thinking, oh man, Mike is not thinking, oh man, I'm gonna pass. I have a family and responsibility that needs to be covered when
Facts.
I'm long gone.
That's right.
and it needs to be covered immediately because death is immediate. You don't die in slow motion, right? Death is immediate. So it needs to be covered right away. If you pass away in May, the mortgage, this is what I'm trying to tell you. People don't think about this.
Oh man.
This is not slow motion and you float up to the heavens, you know,
You're right, man. You're so right, bro.
all of a sudden you flow up to the heavens in slow motion like some cartoon. No, 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 no. You pass away in May, that mortgage company's still gonna want their money in June.
That's right.
They're not asking any questions and they're not sending no condolences cards.
No.
All they know is that mortgage is due. So a lot of our people are not protected. Notice the words I'm using now. They're not protected for the funeral. They're not protected to what happens after the funeral. And then, most importantly, that begins to put a strain on the entire grieving process. This is why you see this thing turn and spiral into something way out of hand because it's already difficult enough dealing with death itself. But now you sprinkle some financial burden on there, you can't even properly grieve. I guarantee you, because now it switched something on in your mind, right? And this is where the whole health thing comes in. You have a sympathetic and then a parasympathetic.
Mm-hmm.
And you know about this, obviously being obviously in the armed forces and things of this nature. So when you're at heightened stress all the time, you cannot be in a healthy state
True.
because you're too busy worrying about financial burden. So now you switch on the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight. Every
Right.
day is a fight or flight, as if a tiger is chasing you, and you're trying to, let's just say the husband passed away and that income is gone and you're trying to deal with the kids, deal with their grieving and all this other stuff. And all of this would have been a little less burden if you had gotten the right protection to cover the funeral. And what it's called is, when I sit down with a client, I always come up with their monthly expenses. So let's go back to that same example, 5,000.
Mm-hmm.
There's 12 months in a year, right?
Yeah.
So now you're going to need at least 60K to cover the first 12 months when that person passes away. Yes or yes?
That's
So
correct.
you're going to need that money to go ahead and handle business. And now when you don't have 60K that can be written in a form of an insurance check right away, now all that's on the wife's mind, all that's on the kid's mind is, how are we making up that 60K? How's it going to happen? You don't just pull 60K out of nowhere, and this $5,000 loss in income has to be made up. And like I said, it has to happen immediately. And that's what insurance is, truly is protection, the ability to grieve, and then now to really pass on the legacy that whoever passed away, whether it's the husband, the wife, or what have you, because obviously there's contributions on both sides to make sure that these children have a little less to think about as they deal with the grieving loss of a parent or whoever the loved one was.
Wow. Thank you for that explanation, man.
Mm-hmm.
As a person that's listening now, can you talk about the importance of having a will or having a power of attorney, and then also if you could elaborate a little bit more now on what is infinite, like insurance, banking, infinite policies and things like that.
Okay, perfect. So I'll tackle the first part. So having a will is huge, especially, what word did I say?
Yeah.
Especially if you have a home. Because here's what happens. I've worked in the banking industry as well, right? So after Wall Street, I've worked for big firms, um, banks that begin with C, let's just put it like that, and things of this nature, right? And I've worked with banks that begin with the letter B. So these are like the top three banks in the world when it comes to this stuff, right? And at the end of the day, the people who give you the mortgage, the big banks and things of that nature, they don't want your home. They're not into, property management. They want that payment. but they will take your home if they don't get that payment.
Right.
It's just that simple. So at the end of the day, what happens is that a lot of times what happens in this situation is the deed was in the husband's name, and agree or disagree, 9 times out of 10, sometimes the man passes away first.
Mhm.
And that's usually because he's not taking care of his health. In an example of what my father I just alluded to, he ignored the symptoms of colon cancer and thought it can just wish it away. So long story short, the father maybe or the husband may have the deed in his name only. So now he never bothered when he purchased the home to put the wife's name on the deed or the children. So depending on when he passes away, in this example, now if his name is on the deed and on the mortgage and no one else's name is on the deed, there really isn't any ownership to that property because he just passed away.
Right.
So now once the wife, let's just say it's Jan, misses a couple of payments, it's very easy for these big banks to get their $400 an hour lawyers to be like, listen, we can start the foreclosure very easily because there's no one other that has survivor rights to this property. So that's a huge mistake not having right off the bat. That's a nugget right there. That right there is a nugget. Turn to your neighbor. Make sure, make sure if people are married or even if they're not married, have another family member's name on the deed. Very quick. You could do a quick claim deed under $100, get it recorded. So now it makes it harder for the bank to come and just snatch the property.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense, bro.
Okay. So first things first, that's the power of having that in place.
All
If
right.
you have a property, have family members' names on the deed, as many as possible, the ones that you trust that you think are going to do the right thing if you were to pass either later on naturally or suddenly. The second thing, the will now just spells everything out. I don't have to tell you, I've been doing insurance for quite a long time. These fights, when someone passes away, get nastier than an MMA fight. Okay, and these people actually know each other. They're not even going for a belt or championship. This thing gets nasty. No, daddy said I can have the car. Daddy said I can have the second investment property. All of this stuff is not spelled out because once again, the person is not thinking I'm going to pass away. They don't want to think about that. And it's that type of thinking, not preparing ahead of time, that gets people in trouble.
Mhm.
Just do it, set it and forget it, and you don't have to do it again. And that's what I'm here to do, to basically plug up all the holes so you can do this one time and then go live your life.
Right.
Because I guarantee you, you'll sleep better. I guarantee you, because you know that the kids are taken care of. I got a whole year of expenses for Jan and the kids, and I prepared for a little. I bought a little extra policy to make sure that the kids go to college. Jan, all Jan has to do now is distribute, because now you've taken care of that. It's funny to me. It's like people take better care of their car than they take care of their legacy.
Mm.
Mm. Turn to your other neighbor, man. The other neighbor on the other side. They won't even
Oh man.
they won't even let forget about it. Don't let have a matte finish or something. They won't let a scratch go on it. They won't let a weekend go without a car wash, a detail. Okay. They'll change the oil on time, right at 3,000 miles. Like they're not even playing around. But for your family, you got no protection.
Mm.
Let
Wow.
that sink in now. Let
That's simmer.
let it sink in. So this is an inanimate object. Because eventually a car is going to die too. A car don't drive to forever, but you're taking better care of a car or a home and putting all this money into it. But you have not put this kind of protection into your family.
Right.
What are we talking about though? What are we talking about?
Right.
And that's how people need to think about insurance if you really wanted to sum it up. So that's that aspect. So the will basically lays everything out, says this goes here, that goes here, this goes here, and yes. And now I have other friends who are in the insurance industry that are actually coming up with even better ideas, where now you have video wills, where
Okay. Okay.
the video will is actually with an attorney. And believe it or not, it's not that expensive to do this because these kind of services are getting cheaper. This used to be a thing for the rich, where they
Correct.
leave, but they actually are sitting down with a nice suit. If you're listening to this, you know I've obviously transitioned. I know it's very difficult, but I put some things in place to make it easier. And then he or she just goes through the laundry list. And you can't talk about how accountable that is. That is accountabilism on the highest level because that person has prepared for that day and now has given their family a chance to see them last speak
Hmm.
and actually give the kind of love and thing and hard work and distribute it the way that he or she wanted it to be distributed.
Hmm.
Not in somebody else's words, in their words, and in video form.
Hmm.
So that is also another concept. There's video wills, and they're not that expensive. They used to be, but like things over time with technology, things just get more affordable. So that's the whole concept of the will. And then the last piece is infinite banking. So basically, infinite banking concept has been around since the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds,
Hmm.
where basically you can use insurance to get a cash value, right? It's not a lot, sometimes anywhere between 4 to 6%, but it occurs without waiver.
Hmm.
So it's invested in the stock market, but it's invested under very safe things like bonds. So
Hmm.
the insurance company is managing it for you, similar to a 401k. But unlike a 401k, there's no fees. You have access to your money and it pays regardless of what the market is doing. Because if the market goes up a certain amount, you're only getting 6%. If the market goes to hell, you're only getting 6%. So it's one of those slow and steady things. Now, a person can have outside investments if they want to be risky and then have a combination portfolio. But you know that this particular infinite policy, if all hell breaks loose, recession, this 2008 debacle, people were still getting their infinite banking percentage. So it's one of those sleep safe at night type of policies. And believe it or not, once again, this used to be the thing of the rich, but now the word is coming out here that you can get policies like this, believe it or not, for like $200-300 a month and up, obviously depending on the person's financial makeup. But this was only heard of by the rich. And now the beautiful thing is that you can tie that infinite banking policy to the will, right?
Right.
Say, hey, you can start an infinite banking policy for the children too. So when they reach a certain age, a good age is about, 16, 18, and it'll be in their name. So now literally if you have a child named John and you start one and you have three kids, John, Jane, and Rebecca, you start one in all three of their names. If you contributed to it $200 a month, and then depending on when you pass away, now they literally just take over those policies.
Right.
And then they do the same thing for their children and so on. And that's what the Rockefellers did. That's why they couldn't be broke even if they wanted to, is because that 6%
True.
compounded now, slow and steady, slow and steady. I don't care what the market is doing. Crypto is falling out the sky. This is your slow and steady policy. You got to have one of those in the portfolio. When you have one of those, you know your family legacy is protected.
I love the fact that they use the concept of the infinite banking. They allow the means of compound interest, and then stacked on top of that, they use their trust to carry that on for the legacy of the family. So I wanted to tap into that a little bit. If you could briefly tap into maybe the importance of compounding a trust with all of these different concepts that you just mentioned.
Perfect. So what happens is that once you get a trust done, and and I will make a caveat here. The trust that most people think about are they think they're done with an attorney, but that's actually a public trust. A private trust is when you make one separately with an attorney based on private contract law. So when you do that, that comes with certain advantages where now it's not subject to public record, things of this nature, and it puts less eyes on what you're doing because you don't need the whole world to know that you have a trust because you just make yourself a target.
Right.
So by doing it privately with a reputable law firm and go because there's public trust and there's private trust where it's just between you, that attorney, and the people that you're naming as the beneficiary. Now you have more privacy, and then now you can actually have the trust own the infinite banking policy, which gives you now a double lockup protection layer because now that trust owns it. You don't own it. Mike does not own it.
Right.
Femi does not own it. The trust is an entity just like another human being.
Hmm.
So now you can't easily sue a trust. You can sue me. You can't sue a trust as easy, especially
Right.
if it's private. So
Right.
you get private protection, you get more hearsay on how you want to distribute certain things to your beneficiary, if that's your children and things of this nature. And then now the infinite banking is still compounding, but under the ownership of the trust. And last time I checked, you can't kill an entity, right? You can't
No, you
kill
can't do
people.
that.
You can't kill.
You can't do that.
Oh, okay. So because you can't kill paperwork, then there it is right there.
So, Femi, bro, you obviously dropped a whole bunch of knowledge and gems on us, man, based off of your experience and just your wealth of knowledge and education you just shared. I wanted to tap into a question here, man, about entrepreneurship. So,
Mhm.
like, what is the number one bag as an entrepreneur that they need to chase that will enhance all aspects of their lives?
You know what? Believe it or not, out here nowadays, everything is about material. So most people are chasing a Gucci bag, a Louis Vuitton bag, and a money bag.
Right.
Believe it or not, people need to chase a health bag.
Mm.
Let me tell you what it is. Because if I say, Mike, I'll give you $1 million tonight, but tomorrow night you got to end your life. Do you want the bag still?
No.
Okay, so the big misnomer out there is that time is money. No way. Because if you run out of time, you can't make no more money.
Facts.
Okay. So if I say, Mike, okay, forget that. I'll give you $1 million tonight, but then you're gonna have to give up a family member of yours, gonna have to pass to get it. You want it?
No, we're not doing that.
Okay. So we obviously know now money is not more important than relationships. Because you're not going to give up $1 million and lose your mom
Right.
or your father or someone
Right.
close to you. So now it's just one of those concepts where, okay, let me just figure this out. So if money's not important than time and money's not important in relationships, why are people spending all this money, all this time to get money, and yet they're losing their relationships? They're letting their health lack off, which AKA you're losing time because then you're no longer here on earth. You done transitioned.
Hmm.
So people have the priorities mixed up. They say they chasing the bag so their family can live a better life, but what are you giving up for that? You're giving up your health because you're not checking up on it, too busy chasing every single bag. And on top of that, you're not spending quality time with the people that you love in order to get this bag.
Hmm.
Because at the end of the day, time is not money. Money is um, time is way more important than money, as I just showed you in those two examples.
Right.
The number one bag that people need to chase is to check on their health, make sure that they're good, make sure that if they feel fatigue, if they feel stressed out, if they're feeling any kind of PTSD, things of that nature, any of those things, if you improve those, I bet you'll improve your efficiency of getting a new bag. Because when you feel good, a certain type of attraction comes onto you, and getting a bag is easier because now you have the law of attraction on you. Because why chase something when you can attract it?
Mm.
And you're only going to attract that if you're in a high vibration. And that's what people are. People have a lot of money, but they have a bad vibration, and they're wondering why they have money, but they have all these problems.
Mm-hmm.
Should have switched it.
Wow. Man, thank you for sharing that, man. That hit in so many ways for myself, man. So thank you for sharing that, bro. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to say this as I jump into my next question. Like I said, man, I'm not sure if I ever told you this publicly, but like whenever I hear you talk and I hear you speak, I get the Denzel and the Malcolm X vibe. From
You're
so
too
I don't
kind.
know if it's
You're too kind. You're too
uh,
kind. You're too kind, man.
so I don't know if it's the Harlem or the movies or whatever, man. But I had another guest, a Muslim guy, and we were talking about Malcolm X and stuff like that. We got into religion.
Mm-hmm.
So my next question for you is about religion, bro. So what is and I'm saying that because we have entrepreneurs all over this world that are doing so many great things and stuff like that. And I see a lot of them will touch and talk about faith and things like that. For yourself, can you tell me like what is like one of the main religion that you see successful entrepreneurs are belonging to and things like that?
To be honest with you, the number one religion that most successful entrepreneurs, and I don't care what religion that they go to,
Hmm.
is based in what I have named accountabilism.
Okay,
So
tell me about that.
if you hear that anyone else, make sure let me know so I can get my lawyer on them.
All right.
Um, so basically, at the end of the day, you have to be accountable for whatever that you say that you want.
Hmm.
If a person says they want to be a millionaire, or they have a dream to even help the homeless or do whatever it is that they want in their life, there has to be a level of accountabilism. They have to be accountable to whatever they say out words, because words have legs.
Mm.
Catch this now. Words have legs, so they can
Hmm.
walk things in or out of your life.
Hmm.
So if we say something and we really don't mean it, the universe is not going to bring it to you. The universe
Right.
is going to bring it to you, and I don't care what religion we're talking about: Muslim, Torah, Bible, whatever the religion, Hinduism, whatever the religion is, it's always about action backing up those words that you want to speak on, because the universe is only going to answer those calls and help you, push you along once you do the work.
Right.
So successful entrepreneurs, they're accountable, and they, to me, if you want to call it a religion, it's accountabilism that they actually attribute to, and there's going to be adversity, because that's the second way that the universe is going to test if you want to do this. Oh, you want to be a millionaire? I'm gonna give you a million problems. Don't let that go over your head. Catch that, Odell Beckham. Catch that. Because it's just like if everyone just said they wanted to be a millionaire and the universe just answered, then everyone would what? Be a millionaire.
That's right.
No, you want to be a millionaire, I'm gonna give you a million problems. But once I see that you overcome those problems, I'll make you a multi-millionaire. You see that?
I see it.
Because you paid
So
your dues.
go ahead. I'll let you finish it.
Yeah, so because you paid your dues.
I wanted to you just share with me, man. You shared it off air, but if you could share your definition of what adversity is, man.
I think adversity, to be honest with you, is a testing ground. Okay. So contrary to belief, we're not just here to come to earth and pay bills, get married and have children and then have grandchildren. No, we're actually down here to learn something as well. So depending on, whatever the person's religion is, my belief is that we're coming down here and God is here to test us on certain things, certain levels, right? So that whole thing goes with one of the biggest things that allowed me to see success, to be honest with you, is when you track things. So one of my favorite quotes is, if it can be tracked, it can be changed.
Mhm.
So how do I know if a kid who's in third grade, if he has enough credits to go to fourth grade?
Track
They
it.
test, right? There's
Yeah.
certain tests that you got to pass to go to the next grade.
Mhm.
So if you have to track things when you are in school, track things if someone goes on to college, track things if, how do I know I became a millionaire? Because I go to my bank account and there's $1 million in there. Not $1 million in assets, actually $1 million in cold hard cash that I
Mhm.
can keep in there and still pay my bills monthly.
Right.
So what happens is that when you track things, that allows the accountability to come in. And that also goes back to what you said. It changes your mindset about adversity.
Right.
Why am I going through all this? Why am I solving a million problems? Because I said to the universe, that's what I want to do.
Mhm.
So now I have to be accountable to my words, match them up with my actions, and then arrive. So now, if I'm tracking that, I arrive on levels and then I get to a certain stage. But that's not going to happen unless you're tracking what you're doing. That's why bodybuilders track what they do in the gym. That's why accountants track the numbers. That's why if someone wants to lose weight, they got to know how much body fat and how much fat they lost from week to week. You have to track things in order to get to a goal. And I think most people lose the concept of that and they just say they want to do something. I want to lose weight. I want to become a millionaire. I want to, own X amount of properties. But what are you tracking along that pace? Because along with that tracking, that's also going to let you know two things where you can probably solve a problem for yourself and the world.
Right.
Don't miss that.
Right.
Most inventions happen because people were trying to solve a problem for themselves.
Mhm.
Easy pass. I can go into many inventions. And then the second thing it's going to do, it's going to now make you comfortable being uncomfortable with adversity. So now when the adversity come, you don't get upset. You like, good. That means I'm one step closer to my goal. So if I solve this one, knock it out. I solve this one, that I'm that much closer to the finish line of whatever I'm stating that I want to do.
That's what I always like speak about, that resilient mindset. It's like once you've done it and you've gotten past it, like your mindset says, like, yeah, I've done this, I've gotten through this. Like God has blessed me enough or put me through like the valley and all these things that I've been through, bro. So when you come through, man, you like, that was easy. Or you probably, I found that like most people are celebrated when they go through hard stuff opposed to like easy stuff. Like people don't remember like the easy things that they've been through, but they could tell you about some hard stories that they've been through, some hard times in life and things like that. And I think those resonate a lot more when people share their stories around the adversities that they do come through.
For sure. For sure.
So as I'm listening to you talk, man, a thing that's super big for me, man, is a leadership.
Mhm.
And as an entrepreneur and as a business person and someone that's accountable, right? Can you talk about the importance of leadership as it is for self, as it is for leading people too as well?
I think it's huge. The leadership thing is one of those things where it's funny, right? You have to You have to beat yourself in order to lead others. Let me unpack this.
Tell me about that.
You have to beat yourself before you lead others. So what I mean by that? What I mean by that is that there's certain things that everyone knows we have certain vices. Let's just say I like junk food, I like to stay up late, things of this nature. Until I'm able to basically defeat those particular foes, how can I tell somebody else don't eat junk food, don't stay up late? Because remember, this is what the problem is sometimes with parenting. People, parents, you know the famous line, do what I say, don't do what I do. No, they're looking at you as the
Correct.
example. So they're looking more at your actions more than your words. So if your example is not proper, how can you expect your words to hit as hard as that? So the whole concept is that you have to defeat certain things that everyone's is different, right? Once you defeat those things, then you give yourself the opportunity to start the concept of leadership. Because in leadership, as you've led many things, you own your own business, you've hired people, gotten rid of people, things of this nature. Now that just starts the first stage, because you've actually worked on yourself and defeated those internal foes. Now you can now show that leadership without even the person hearing your words. They're just going to say, look, Mike comes in on time, he's always eating salads, he never misses a workout. They're looking even when you think they're not looking.
Yeah.
That's leadership as well.
Right.
Lead by example. So now along that aligns, let's say you start to lead, I don't know, employees, or you're somehow, leading other men or women in some capacity. They're looking at every little single thing that you do. So if you're on point, you never know who you're influencing based off your non-verbal actions, which to me is the most powerful form of leadership. And this is why when you see great leaders like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and things like that, people saw, they didn't just talk, they weren't just great talkers, they saw the action. And that influenced many of people that they don't even know to this day because of what they saw. They didn't just, it wasn't lip service. So I like to
Right.
say that talk is cheap. That's why it's always on sale.
Hey man, so how do you maintain a positive mindset when adversities hit you, like whether it's self-doubt, fear, frustration, limiting beliefs, and all these types of things? How do you even face these things when obstacles come your way?
Great question. Now, this is something that I believe you learn over time. Now, I've had some adversities in my life, like I told you, from the very beginning, and each time I learn from them. Obviously, one of my best friends committing suicide, losing my parents, even though I'm blessed to have, lost them later on in my life. People lose their parents much younger in their life, but
Mhm.
I've had close deaths. So each time it taught me something, because at the end of the day, when the adversity comes, right? Yes, it's not easy to go through, and what I'm saying is easier said than done, but it has to be learned in this life, because we're always going to have adversity. I don't care if you're a millionaire, if you're a billionaire, you never killed a fly. Some adversity is going to come to you, because that's just how this world is structured. Because if
Mhm.
you weren't down here to learn lessons, then why are you even down here? You're down here to find your purpose. The second reason you're down here is to actually give it away. The purpose is not to live forever, which is one of my favorite quotes, but to actually create something that does,
Mm.
which is obviously your legacy if you have children, or a foundation, or whatever, hits your heart to do. But at the end of the day, to answer your question more specifically, I always look at, there's two choices. Some adversity hit, right? a death in the family. Yes, I'm going to grieve and things of this nature. But at the end of the day, is that grieving going to bring the person back?
No.
And what would that person want me to do?
Carry on.
Correct. So I always think of two things. What is the adversity? What is the learning lesson? And how do I move forward? Because no matter what the adversity is, if I think of those three things, although it's going to be difficult, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Those three things are going to put me on the road to recovery of whatever the adversity is. And if it's a business adversity, at this point in my life, I actually cherish it because, like I said, if I go through this adversity and it's business related, I think there's a good chance another person in my same industry, in my same business, and if I solve it for me, I can actually package that and actually sell them a solution.
Repurpose it.
Does that make sense? So I
Yes, sir.
actually, when it's a business, I love it because that means for every problem, you probably just solve two more for someone else if you really go ahead and solve it for yourself. And now that's just another contribution that you can actually give to the world. So adversity is actually hard work disguised in overalls.
Absolutely. Femi, for you where you're at now, man, I imagine that there's a couple people that has inspired you, has helped you, got to the level of where you're at now.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk a little bit about like mentorships, some books that you may have read too as well, um, in regards to like the importance of them for yourself and how you got to where you're at now, man?
Great question. So I'm a huge believer. I'm an avid reader. So I completely love knowledge. Now, based off my schedule, I listen to more audio books in the car. So I turn my car into a university. Um, the time tested ones, Rich Dad Poor Dad, The Millionaire Next Door, The Richest Man in Babylon.
Hmm.
These are some key books because all of those are about leadership, adversity, and solutions.
Hmm.
So if now you start to get into any kind of basically self-education, not the education that we get in school, and I'm all with about education in school, but nowadays the world is changing too quickly, to be honest with you.
Right.
After high school or during high school, someone needs to start self-educating themselves, especially in the financial arena, in order to keep up with the way that the world is changing. Now we have things like digital currency and crypto, and recessions happen and things of this nature. And these kind of things, you can't overcome these things just based off what they teach you in school. There's no way. You have to keep up on your own on certain aspects of it in order to keep yourself safe and your family safe. So my biggest thing is I can name 1,000 books, but my whole thing is just keep reading. Number one, listen to podcasts, obviously like yourself, that are bringing the people the type of information that they need to know from the type of guests that you vetted and know that it will make an impact. And my third thing is always just a concept of believing in yourself, right? Because I don't care what anyone has said. I've met very wealthy people in my life. They are just like everyone else. They had adversity. They had things they had to go through. They had to deal with death. They're no different.
Right.
But their mindset of I'm going to keep failing forward.
Hmm.
Notice the words I said. Failing forward until I get to the end of my goal, because either way, the adversity is not going to stop because I'm boo-hooing. Fail forward and see where it brings you.
So as we get ready to wrap up here, man, you mentioned something earlier with the previous answer that you had talked about,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's something important that people always take into consideration and think about, man.
Mhm.
If you could expound a little bit, man, what is your definition of the meaning of life, your purpose here on this earth, and your legacy?
We touched on it a little bit. I just believe that God puts us on earth to catch certain lessons, right?
Mhm.
And there's certain lessons and mindsets that actually, especially now with social media, things have changed obviously over the last 10 years, heck, over the last 5 years. And really, this is really about limiting distractions and more about self-education and doing what is believed for you. The real reason why people fail this test called life is because they're looking at somebody else's paper,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't realize that the questions are different than your neighbor or your left neighbor or the neighbor on your right. So you're looking at their paper for answers, but at the end of the day, even if you read a book, you still have to relate that to you. Take the lesson and relate it to you. You may not do it exactly the way that that author did it in that book. You still have to translate it and say, how is this going to help Michael?
Right.
Not that author. That author already did it their way. Does that make sense?
Makes sense, bro.
So the whole concept is that a couple of things that, and I'll kind of end with that. There's a couple of concepts that really keep trapped, and we talked about some of them. Time is money. We already crossed that out. Time is way more valuable than money, because without time, you get no more money. But without money, I still got enough time to make it. Okay. The
Mm-hmm.
second thing is about, self-education. I think there's a big thing out here where it's all about degrees versus your destiny. Let me play that back. So a
Go
lot of
ahead.
people getting degrees, and I have no problem with education, but my whole thing is that is getting all these degrees really your destiny? Are you really happy? Are you getting the masters because you want to, or because they're going to pay you a little bit more? Because some people are spending 10, 15,000 to get a postgraduate degree, and their job only gave them 5,000, and that's before we take the taxes out. Or they put a little handcuff on them and like, oh, we paid for this, you got to stay here 5 years. So is this really what you wanted to do, or was you once again chasing that money again?
Mm-hmm.
So degree versus destiny. The other thing is that being fearful, or is this a fair world? So what do I mean by that? A lot of people don't chase their dream because they're afraid. I don't know how it's going to work out. I'm afraid. I don't want to take a risk. You're already in a risk. Not taking a risk is a risk already.
Mm.
Don't believe me? We had this little thing called COVID, right?
Right.
Everybody thought they were safe on their job and all that. And next thing you know, something that was out of the control of everyone, people got laid off. And you were playing it safe, right? You wasn't doing anything. Nobody, but I'm not bothering anybody. But guess what? This thing called life again. So now, if you had a dream to be have a side business or whatever before COVID hit, if you had learned those skills, you wouldn't have been so fearful when something that was out of control of everyone.
Right.
You could have leaned back on that, whether that be making cakes, event planning, whatever. If you had not let fear lock you up, you would have had another skill to lean back on. Because most people are on this, oh, okay, if I do everything, I go to church, I contribute to the poor and all that, then it should be fair that I get what is due to me. But that's an entitlement thing. Even Mother Teresa had to go through adversity, and she didn't do anything to anyone, right?
Right.
So it's obviously that whole concept of I do the right thing doesn't always get you what you think you deserve, right?
Right.
And then one of the last things is always about um tracking your progress, right? You don't know where you're going when you don't know where you come from. A lot of people don't track things in their life. So they'll work on the same job 20 years and they'll be like, I have 20 years experience. No, you don't. You got hired in 2000. You learned everything in the first year and you just repeating the last 20 years of what you learned in 2020 or whenever you got hired. So if you're not progressing at all times, either mentally, spiritually, financially, the world doesn't stand still for you.
No.
How much was an English muffin in 1980? How much is it right now?
Shoot, probably like 25 cents and 50 cents, and now it's probably like $5.
Okay. Is it not the same nook and crannies?
Same thing, bro.
Nook and crannies, right? So that's just a light example to show you that the world doesn't stand still. So you actually have to go meet life at every level. So I always tell people this all the time. Listen, they have a concept, a tree grows in Brooklyn, right? It's a little slogan out here, to show how people could go to college and grow themselves and things of that nature. So if God made inanimate, because trees grow to huge, elm trees can grow 20, 30, 40 feet and all this other stuff. Does the tree say, nah, I'm good. I've done enough growing. I'm good. No, that tree is always growing. So if God set that up for Mother Nature, what do you think he expects from his offspring? If trees still grow and they're quite large at all, and some of them are quite large, what do you think he expects of us? So we always have to keep growing, and we only know if we're growing if we're tracking everything that we're doing. Now, I don't mean to be anal about it, but there's certain parameters that we need to track. We need to track our finances. We need to track our health. We need to track our spiritual growth. And how you track spiritual growth is things that used to bother you in the 20s, they shouldn't bother you in the 40s. Catch that. Catch that. If somebody cuts you off in the 20s, you are ready to curse them. At 40s, you should be like, have a nice day. It's not worth it. Because that's a sign of what? Emotional and spiritual maturity.
Yeah.
So these kind of things you need to track in your life without question. Your finance, your health, and your spiritual journey. Now, if you want to track other things, that's fine. But those three, be a minimum. Because they let you know, is this the same Mike from 5 years ago? Is it? Because if I'm still in the same place financially, if I'm still cursing out the person who cut me off, if I'm still not in the health position that I'm supposed to be, then that lets me know I'm not doing enough.
Right. Wow. So, okay. I heard someone said the same thing you said about the tree, but they reference it in regards to animals. And if you think about God provide food for the birds, you name the animal, they eat every day. None of them starve. So if he can do those for the animals, bro, imagine what he'll do for you, man. He will provide for you.
But see what it is, here's the part that people miss. This is the part, this is the gem. This is the part where this is the Pirate of the Caribbean gem, okay? Because he expects more from us, there has to be more accountability.
Right.
And that's the part that people don't want to do, because for accountability, you got to shut down certain distractions, having fun. I'm all about, but at a certain point, you have to keep it in moderation in order to stay on track. You see what I'm saying? So social media is one of those things where, like they say, whatever entertains you, trains you.
Yeah.
So now people are being trained by social media, and that's what gets them off the path. The reason why God does that for the animals and things of that nature, because he's already set up a system and they've never broken it.
Right.
Last time, Have you ever seen a vegan lion? No, I'm just asking you. Have you seen one?
We already know the answer to that.
Okay, so at the end of the day, he makes sure there's enough livestock for the lions to eat what they have to do because they never break their nature.
Right.
You see, because there's a certain mother nature has set up. You don't see lions starting to chomp on kale. So he's like, you followed my system, so I'm going to make sure there's enough zebras and all this other stuff that you can eat because you are on track.
Right.
Notice the words I'm using again. Track. So all he's expecting is the same thing from us. And even though it'll come with adversity, those adversities come with lessons. Those lessons make us better, and then they make everything grow.
I got you, bro, man. I got 2 questions for you, man. I'm gonna get you out of here, man. I so much appreciate your time, man.
Definitely.
So, me and you had spoke earlier before we got started, and you had shared some stuff around like lies and things like that, around things that keeps people broke in society, man. So, what are like some lies that that has kept people broke in the society for decades and counting, man? And if you can provide some solutions to that too, as well.
Absolutely. So we touched on some of them. Time is money. The second thing is that um distractions and things of that nature
Hmm.
is acceptable, and after a point and period is not acceptable.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, the other big one is I'll get to that tomorrow. You
Hmm.
don't have time like that. You have to live because I'll put it like this. Here's a simple analogy. And even when people are playing video games, right? Do you see keep people playing video games, play it, put it on pause, go eat a sandwich? They play with intention. Serious gamers now get money, big money to play video games.
Right.
They get millions of dollars. I wish they did that when I had Atari and shoot, they ain't give me no money and I was good. I was destroying people in Madden. You hear me? So my whole thing is that if you're playing a game with intention and you're not playing life with that same intention, what's going on?
Right.
Because they know in a video game you only get a certain amount of lives. So let's say it's Mario Brothers. I know I'm taking you back. You only get 3. In this one, you get 1.
Right.
And you were playing harder on Mario Brothers than you playing right now. What's that
Hmm.
about? And that's a video game.
Don't
A
add up.
thing. Exactly. So those are the big ones. Time is money. We can get to it tomorrow, right? Distractions is a huge one, especially now in this day and age of social media. And the biggest one to me, in my opinion, is um sacrificing your health to try to chase a bag. I've known so many people to pass away, even in since we met in Texas a couple years ago.
Hmm.
These people are younger than me, some of them, but they're running themselves ragged trying to chase a bag, and they're not making health a priority. They're making it a backdrop.
Hmm.
And when you do that, it doesn't make sense because, like I said, when you're healthy and you're on a high vibration, everything becomes easier. I didn't say easy, I said easier. You attract more business, relationships in your life, and things of this nature because people can't help but feel that sphere around you, that good aura. And not saying that bad people are not going to come. I'm not saying any of that. But what I'm saying is that you can identify the snakes in the grass better because your aura is so positive. Now God gives you certain levels of discernment, I should say, to peep certain things happening to you because once again, he sees that you're on track. So he's going to give you a couple of nuggets. And so that's why I keep it in that health wise, because you can't be in a good vibration unless your health is high or higher. So that means, unfortunately, cutting out certain foods. That means exercising. That means getting the proper sleep. When you do those three things, you now automatically boost your physical health, which automatically now boosts your spiritual health and puts you in a higher vibration to succeed and get to your goals.
Wow. I think you already answered my question here, but I was gonna ask you, man, how do you, Femi,
Mm-hmm.
maintain your psychological peace? How do you maintain your health? How do you take care of yourself and things like that to be operating at your optimum vibration?
Well, I'm a student of the game, so I'm big on growth, right? So my whole thing is that what keeps me high and reaching for higher is that I just know that the world is always changing. So what I mean by that is I'm constantly reading, whether it be about health, finance, or spirit. Those are my big three things, because those are the things, like I stated, we need to track.
Hmm.
So anything that's out there, I listen to a lot of podcasts. That's why I love the fact that you started yours. I read and listen to a lot of books as well. And I keep my ear to the streets on what's new, what's innovative. So what happens is that literally and this has been kind of proven, you really can't get old once you're creating new neurons. And how do you create new neurons? You have to be learning something new on a daily or weekly basis. So when you get new brain cells, that's why they tell you if you do something for 30 days or more, it forms a habit. And that habit, they didn't finish the quote off, forms new neurons.
Right,
So those neurons over the next year or two, now you become a different Michael than you were even last year.
right,
So now you are becoming a new person literally on a daily or weekly basis just by learning something new, no matter what it is, whether it be whatever you one of your passion, music, art. That's why I love traveling as well, because also when you change the environment, you get new ideas. So going on vacation and things of that nature, whether for pleasure or business, also puts you in a new environment. So your brain is like, oh, this is somewhere new. And then all of a sudden you'll get many a time I've been on the road and got a new idea just because I was in a new environment. So the brain reacts to that new stimuli. This is why it's important. And you get to soak up other cultures and things of this nature. So these are the kind of things that actually allow you to form new neurons, interact with new cultures, and appreciate what you have. Because I recently just came back with a trip to Colombia with the fellas.
hmm,
And we usually pick one destination a year, things of this nature. And when you really see humble beginnings out there, it really lets you know. Because we went to the favelas, the areas that are kind of like the hood of the area, where houses are literally stacked on the top of each other with mere rocks, sheet rock, things of this nature. It really makes you appreciate, and they're happy. They're absolutely happy. They're not chasing a bag and things of this nature. And literally, they have 1/5 of what a person has. Literally, some places, the average person in Colombia is making under $300 a month.
wow.
They're happy. But we're over here with all this luxury and all this other stuff, and we're not appreciative. And we're not prepared for if something happens to us to make sure that our kids don't end up in a bad situation as well. So one of those things is that always form new neurons, always grow, always be learning, and trust me, your brain can't help but become a new you, because those new neurons are going to form a new and stable mindset for you to just get more and more and more and then that's how you maintain the level of your success.
Thank you for that, man, and thank you for being on this interview, bro. Thank you for sharing your wealth of knowledge on all of your experiences, and giving us a little bit of an insight about like your family and your upbringing, bro. As we get ready to get out of here, if you could, man, tell our listeners if they ever want to like to book you for a speaking engagement, invite you for a podcast, do insurance business with you, or anything else from that, man. Could you leave that information so we could reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm in the process of rehauling some of my presence online. So the best way right now to get in touch with me is through my email. So my email is outstandinglife@yahoo.com. So that's outstanding life life@yahoo.com. They can reach out to me that way. And depending on what it is that they want to inquire about, we'll take it from there. And other social media handles and things of that nature, they can reach me there first. And then those other things I'm probably preparing to put up later on this year.
Absolutely, bro. But like I said, man, thank you so much for being here, man. Thank you for being a guest. You're always welcome to come back and share some more knowledge and some more game with us, man. Like I said, man, you're like a walking encyclopedia, bro.
I appreciate it, man. You're too kind, man. Thank you for having me.
Man, thank you, man. It's been a pleasure, man. Until next time, for Femi and for myself, Michael Allison, peace and we love you.
Peace.
Can't complain at all. Couple dollars in my pocket, no income and go. Been working on my body, getting healthier. Thank God for clarity.